Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Atlanta Journal-Constitution Decatur Book Festival presented by Emory University. I'm Toni Tipton-Martin, author of Jubilee and the Jemima Code, and I am thrilled to share with you that just this week I was named editor-in-chief at America's Test Kitchen's Cook's Country. It's my pleasure to be here to introduce tonight's special guests, Mike Jordan and Chef Chris Williams. But first, let me acknowledge our sponsor. This year's Culinary Conversations are presented by Whole Foods Market, and we thank them for their support of our industry and our community. And now to our guests. Chef Chris Williams comes from a famed hospitality family in Houston, Texas. His restaurant Lucille's is an homage to his great-grandmother, Lucille Bishop Smith, and she is one of the authors I wrote about in the Jemima Code. Lucille was a trailblazing chef, educator, and entrepreneur whose legacy also lives on in her much sought-after treasure box of recipes. Chef Chris is doing his part to dispel stereotypes about soul food while his restaurant is becoming a true fixture in the community. Mike Jordan is an Atlanta-based journalist and editor with work in publications such as the Wall Street Journal, Rolling Stone, Eater, Thrillist, and more. And now, it is my honor to bring to you Chef Chris Williams and Mike Jordan.
Welcome to Culinary Conversations, presented by Whole Foods. Tonight's session is sponsored by the Local Palate, and you are here with us at the Decatur Book Festival. We appreciate you having us. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with Mike Jordan and Chris Williams. We both appreciate it. I won't speak for the gentleman who I have the extreme pleasure of interviewing today, but before I get to that, I wanted to ask you if you have the means, and obviously these are challenging times, but if you have the means and if you have the interest, I would love for you to please consider donating to continue innovating and making relevant programming like this for the Decatur Book Festival. So there's a green button that's under me. If you see that green button, just go ahead and click it. And if you can give, we'd love for your donation to come through the pot because it allows us to continue bringing you these culinary conversations and other great programming. And also Chris, who I'm going to introduce to you in a moment, he is here. So if you have a question for him, and I may not get to it, then go ahead and drop that in the Ask a Question. If you just type that in and you'll see the Ask a Question feature. It's also underneath me. Put your question in there and we will be sure to get to that question as long as time allows. But I have already been loud and long-winded. So in order to continue to make this something interesting, I'm gonna introduce a brilliant, talented, African-American chef, Black man who, leaning back in the chair right now. You see him, folks. I mean, like he's got it, like put some respect on the man's name. Chef Chris Williams of Lucilles in Houston. Give him a round of applause. Chef Williams, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you guys having me to be a part of this.
Is it Chef Chris or is it Chef Williams? Just so folks know.
Now it's just Chris. It's just,
Okay.
Chris. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Comfortable, less formal.
All right, so we keep it low key. And that's good because this conversation, the culinary conversations here at Decatur Book Festival, intended to be, I would like to say low key. They brought us in here to talk about, what's going on in terms of the legacy of African-American restaurants, of restaurateurship, of, culinary art. And I wanted you, for anyone who may not be familiar with you, and also the legacy that you continue, can you just tell people about who is Chef Chris Williams?
Sure. Well, I've been in the culinary game for about 25 years almost. Started off as a busser, then the server, bartender, and then I decided to move to the back of the house and started at the bottom of the line all over again, from dishwasher all the way up. Went to culinary school at Cordon Bleu in Austin, and like I always tell people, we were mutually unimpressed with each other. but I got some good, groundwork done over there. From there, worked in Europe for 4 years, everywhere from London to Lithuania, just putting different feathers in my cap, really seeing what the culinary world was, what it really had to offer the world, not just the flavors that we grew up with. And all that stuff has remained in my utility belt. After that, went and worked in Canada for 2 years, and then up and down the East Coast for about 3 more years before I opened up Lucilles, which is a restaurant which is named after my great grandmother, who was a chef and a pioneer over 100 years ago. And so today at Lucilles, we celebrate 2 of our most famous recipes: a hot roll mix, the nation's first instant hot roll mix, which was verified by the Chicago Tribune in 2014, and this is also verified by them, the recipe that gave Pillsbury the key to their empire that followed as soon as they got their hands on it. So yeah, it's just been a big celebration of her. We just celebrated our 8th anniversary a few days ago, which is incredible, and to be in the city of Houston with no investors or anything like that, and 15,000 plus restaurants, more restaurants per capita than any other city in the country. To be able to make it 8 years on our own, and especially to be able to make it through this 8th year, which has been the most trying year in my existence, period. We're just full of gratitude. So that's a quick rundown.
Great. We'll get deeper into it. I don't know if it's even an appropriate question for chefs, and I think a lot of people struggle with knowing how to approach this, but how would you describe what you do in the kitchen? Is there a style to it? Is it a genre? Is that something that people should leave to their own interpretation? What would you say to a question like that? Like, what kind of food do you cook?
So the tagline that I created for the restaurant is Southern cuisine with global influences. So it's really just a great summation of my experience, which is working all over the world. And now we always want to stay local. So if I was a kitchen in the Pacific Northwest, then it would be a Pacific Northwest cuisine with global influences. And what makes it Southern is just the ingredients that grow in our backyard. We're not sourcing out things that don't come from here naturally. We're trying to get the freshest things. And then we take those base ingredients and we include different type of manipulations and flavors and accents and presentations that, you can see hints of Lebanon to Vietnam, to Turkey, to Albania, to Uzbekistan, to Croatia, to the British influence. So it's just a celebration of everything that's good that I've ever had. That's what we try to do in the most approachable, delicious way possible, because the last thing we want to be is pretentious. We're very honest with our approach. As far as what I want the guests to do, what I would want them to experience is, I'd like them to come in with no expectations. Although that's impossible, and I haven't seen it yet. But the fewer expectations you have, the better the experience would be.
Okay, so one thing before we move forward, and in the spirit of honesty, which you brought about, I think you have some Jameson over there, right?
I do.
We should toast to you, to your success, to Lucille's in the beautiful city of Houston, Texas, and to all the great people there, African-American chefs, culinary artists, cookbooks, Decatur Book Festival, also to the creation of brown liquor, which is going to make sure we get through this. Local palate, you know what I mean? We'll shout out to sponsors, get a free one right there. Don't ask for another one. But anyway, shout out to you, man. I want to give you a toast because they couldn't see the drinks underneath it. We had both been trying to get a little too certain depth.
They're going to see him eventually. They're going to see him eventually. But cheers. Appreciate it,
brother. All right. So let's talk about, expectations. And you spoke about your great grandmother, and just explain Lucille's. And for someone who and me, I've actually, Houston is a city that I continue to make plans to visit, but I've actually never been there. And all of my family's like, Mike, you're tripping. Everyone's just like, it's a beautiful city. And being in Atlanta, everyone's just like, you live in Atlanta, you love Atlanta, you would love Houston. But explain Lucille's and explain what makes it so special, and then talk about what you were talking about expectations wise.
Well, what makes it special to me is not to me, what makes it special to the city and to the community that we serve, which is the city at large, which I'm very proud to say, is just that is the fact that this restaurant was born, the concept was born as a celebration of my great-grandmother's legacy, which is something that we just took for granted, as most children do. But as I started to do the research and find out about what kind of a woman she was, what a force she was, I just wanted to share this great story with everybody else. And her story is one of just community and unity, bringing people together of all colors. Anybody who's in need, she was there. She's at the door. You know what I mean? She started off with the working in the church in 1913, like my shirt says. That's how our whole business model was born. And so that energy and that approach is what you feel when you're at the restaurant. You feel like really good. And I love when I hear this commentary is that people always say, you can just really feel like the energy coming out of this place from blocks away, because we're all about doing the good work first. There's a reason why we didn't, I didn't have to furlough any of my employees throughout the shutdown. Like I kept 100% of my people on. Well, I kept 100% of the people on that I wanted to keep. I kept 100% of those people on. So essentially like 98%.
Distinction. All right.
But yeah, we were able to keep our entire team on because we immediately just pivoted from a model of profitability to sustainability, which means that you drop your prices at least 40% across the board. You streamline your menu, you get clever with the ingredients that you're using. And it takes a little bit more work, but you can still give your guests the value, incentivize to come out there and take advantage of it through an innovative curbside pickup program. So throughout all that, we were able to keep 100% of my staff on that I wanted on. And I'm only talking about one person I didn't want, like 98%. But able to keep 100% on and keep the restaurant afloat. And from the beginning, this was, I knew that there were going to be certain challenges that we'd face. Specifically, I knew that Black chef, Black restaurants got to be soul food. That's the perception. That's the expectation, and that's not limited to any one race. That's it. That's everybody's expectation when they see Black chef, Black restaurant. It must equal this. 1 and 1 equals 2. Black equals soul food. That's what people think. And so that was a challenge, but we used that to our advantage, and it only took a couple of weeks for us to get access to the entire city. So it's beautiful. And that's one thing that we maintain, because one thing about Houston is that when it comes to the restaurant scene, it's very, I don't want to say segregated, but it's pockets. You know what I mean? Like you'll see a group of, everybody goes to Mexican restaurants. Everybody's at a Mexican restaurant. But the other restaurants, it's either all or nothing. And what we were doing over at Lucille is that we were able to have everything under one roof, if not sitting at sharing tables together, sitting right across the room from each other, breaking bread in a comfortable environment. From plumbers to politicians to the unemployed, everybody's cool. And that's the thing I'm most proud of about the restaurant. That's why it's so important, because even to this day, in this insane time that we're living through, that's held up.
You brought up a great point that you reminded me to ask you about. When I talked to Tony Tipton-Martin, and she was explaining, why she believed so much in you and what she was so driven to talk about you, and why you and other young Black chefs and young Black mixologists and young Black, restaurateurs and anyone else, and young, old, whatever else, but just people who have not received their due credit for what the work that they've been putting in. She mentioned the fact that when you opened, that fried chicken was not on the menu. And, that was just one of those things. So I wanted to, that to what you were just saying, there's an expectation almost, it seems like, when you have an African-American chef, an owner, a executive chef or whatever, that there are certain things. And I think that there's sometimes not a shame, but there's kind of like a want to show that we are not limited and that we can do other things. But it's also not to say that who doesn't like fried chicken other than vegetarians and vegans, which they have a good reason. But just talk to me about that. Like, what was it that made you decide when you opened to avoid a staple like fried chicken? And I understand that you ended up, she said that she advised you and said, give the people what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. That's a true story. And she was right, because at the end of the day, it's business. You know what I mean? It's business. But the reason why I was hesitant or didn't want to do that was because it's too easy. It would be too easy to fall right in line with the narrative that was created as soon as it was announced that I was, in fact, opening up a restaurant. That if I'd have had that one thing on the menu, then that would have been the thing. That would have been all that would have been written about, because that's what they want. And when I say they, I mean just they, everybody. That's what makes sense, because they operate in this. We operate. We suffer our own expectations, and so we want everything to fall in line with that. So if I would have given that qualifier, that would have been the story, and it would have been limiting, and we wouldn't have been able to do the work that we've done. So what we try to do is to force people to consider, to experience different things. And so we still gave them the same kind of things that you would play on, that you would expect, as far as like you would read them and you'd see something like pork and beans, right? And so people see the pork and beans and they have this expectation with everything else that's already put together. You see pork and beans, and then you're thinking something that comes out of a can. I don't know what people are thinking. But so what they got was this beautiful braised Berkshire pork shank over a 3-bean ragu with the salsa agrodolce with, tomato confit and bacon croutons. It's like, and you're like, whoa, what's this? And then you have like a fish fry. And so that's another dish that we have, fish fry. And what do you get? You don't get like, some fried catfish, coleslaw, and French fries. You get a whole snapper that's fried upright and, topped off with a nuoc mam vinaigrette, which is Vietnamese fish sauce, over mock chu, which is just like cream corn with sweet basil, and a mixed green salad. And it's beautiful. And it's compelling. It's that surprise and that honesty in the approach. Like, we're just playing around. It's meant to be playful, not too serious. I think that's what would change the game for us. And so it was deliberate to force people into being a little bit uncomfortable. That was the point. It was a risk, but it worked out.
I would just like to take another opportunity to give a toast to whole fried red snapper, one of my favorite dishes. So it's also an excuse for me to have another sip of the bourbon over here. So cheers to you for doing things like that again, because that's soul food, right? I mean, like, you're saying words, it's just like, like a mise up, and I'm just like, wow, like I took a little too long to eat before you and I started this conversation, apparently, because now I'm starting to, at the back of you get the feeling, it was like, man, I wish it was just some salty or something. Oh, man. That sounds amazing, man. So when you look at where you are in your career and with your endeavor to show people what you're capable of and what food can be capable of if it comes through what sounds like a very imaginative and very capable, mentality and talent and actually delivery. What is it that you think in today's day and time is the lay of the land? In other words, like, with what people expect from you, what you're delivering, what your great grandmother was able to show people through her recipes was possible, what you're showing people are possible. Where are we today so that we can understand where we may be going forward? What do you think is the lay of the land?
Well, I mean, I think that right now it's the land is just full of people with good intentions. I really believe that people are full of good intentions. I mean, I think that the breadth of Black cookery, like, I mean, it's never been limited, because I mean, we've cooked in kitchens all over the world. There's nothing that soul food doesn't exist in Lebanon. You know what I mean? Like, not as the way that we see it in the South, in the States. But I feel like, yeah, it's nothing but good intentions that are sometimes misplaced or not really managed properly. I love the fact, like, the New York Times did that great piece. Well, they did that piece about the 16 Black chefs changing the world, or changing the American culinary scene, right?
Yes.
Now, the unfortunate part about that piece, that I love the fact that the chefs got to shine because it's well-deserved, hard-earned, and well overdue. But there still wasn't the diversity of what we really do. Because, you know, there was no mention of Patrick Clark's son, who's a chef in New York, who has a beautiful seafood restaurant, and there's nothing soul food about it. There wasn't any mention of, you know, you can insert a bunch of restaurants, there's a ton of them. But everything was very familiar in the sense that, and this is the New York Times, which is, you know, they're writing for the audience that considers themselves to be the most educated, most liberal, most considerate audience on the planet. And now they're being fed this very divisive narrative of like, if you want to go experience some Black cooks, some amazing African-American chefs, this is how it looks. You only have A through C. These are the only 3 genres of food that they're doing that's really well. So it's soul food, it's West African, it's Caribbean, and then soul food, it's A through D, because can't forget about the barbecue. So it's those 4 things, you know what I mean? And I find, like, it's great to get out there, but can we get a little bit nuance? Can we just get a little bit of, you know, some variety? Because I swear there's so much more than that we're capable of doing, and doing at the highest levels. So I like the intentions. I mean, things are happening, and then people are really starting to wake up to the viability of Black-driven concepts, you know, because that definitely didn't exist when I opened up. So it's definitely going in the right direction. I mean, nothing's going to happen overnight. It's not perfect, but it's going in the right direction.
Well, to that ending sentiment, what do you think about when we are looking to lead people to where we want to go? So taking again from the lay of the land where it was to the future landscape. Eventually everyone gets tired of everything. And there's always the idea that things come back around. But, you know, you look at Puff Daddy, you know what I mean? Like he made a lot of money making remixes of things that happened 15 to 20 years before his own time. But there's always been sort of a thing to where people are ahead of their time, and there's looking ahead and saying, at one day, maybe not today, and hopefully I live to see it, there's something that's actually going to come from this to where people are going to realize this was something they should be taking advantage of. I want to walk from that idea as you think about the future into books, because I wonder if you've actually thought about, or if you're in the process of your own cookbook, and what you think a cookbook of the future of African-American culinary excellence looks like.
Okay, so I am obviously a huge fan of cookbooks. That's just the quarter of it right there. The quarter of it.
That's the cookbook wall.
Yeah. That's just this one in this room and this tiny little house that I live in. That's my furniture. It's cookbooks and records. That's it. And cigarettes, obviously, and James. Yeah, so I love cookbooks. As far as writing a cookbook, it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. But, you know, as not making excuses, but my restaurant, I'm pretty much a one-man show. Not that I don't have an amazing team or anything like that, but it's as we're growing and all that kind of stuff, it's just, it's been a lot. And I'm glad to say we're in a constant state of growth, perpetual growth, which is wonderful. So that's been one of the hiccups. And then 2, you know, Tony Tipton-Martin's also just so busy. She doesn't have time to, you know, to write this book for me. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, I definitely want to do it one day. As far as like what the book needs to look like how do you define Black excellence in a cookbook? I think that there's so many different ways, but I think the thing that I would celebrate the most, the thing that I would most want to see, that would be the most important thing to me, is to see a cookbook from an African-American author that's celebrated, that has nothing in it that you would expect. You know what I mean? I would like a traveler book or something that is not based off the old adage of this is what you got to do. You know, like nothing typical to go along with it. I want to see a cookbook from like a Black man that loves Swedish food. You know what I mean? Like, because everybody else, like you have Rick Bayless, who is a great chef. You know, the guy in Chicago that's like pretty much now has just been anointed as like the master of Oaxacan cuisine. And the only thing that he has in common with Oaxacan culture is that he's 5'2". So, but how can that book be celebrated like that? And he can go that far with it. You know, yeah, he's learned the language, he's done all the stuff, he's got the food, he's a master of the food, he's a master student of the food, he's nailed it. And so he has the freedom, as far as everybody else is concerned, to go ahead and do what he wants with that. Yeah, you put in the work, you got it. So that's what I want. I want a Black authored Oaxacan cookbook. that would be that's what I'm looking for a book like that to be celebrated, not be trashed, because it's like, well, how, you know, you don't deserve, like, how can you speak for that? You're not from there. We're like, well, who is from there? American culinary scene is nothing but appropriation. That's all it is. So why can't we can we take a shot at that? We might be pretty good at it. Actually, we are good at it.
Hey, from your skillet to God's lips, you know what I mean? Like, hey. So let me ask you this then. What and I think I look at these conversations kind of like in the flow of almost like sequencing of an album, because there's a lot that goes on in the creative world, and I like to hearken music and food together. I mean, again, when you have a great dinner, there's a wine pairing, and if someone is able to put in some good music and sounds and everything, it all works well. And I'm sure you can tell us a lot about Houston music, which we'll get to in a second. But, you know, when you think about sequencing and when you think about how things lead from where we are today, what do you think it really goes? Like, what are your, not to say grievances, but what do you think is keeping these things that we want to happen? Because I always say, how can we expect to see Black people in space if we can't even get more Black people in food journalism? So I look at that and say, is there something going on to where someone who's doing as much as you're doing and who cares as much as you care, people are just now probably meeting you tonight, and they're still going to be getting to know you later on, when it would be great if people in Atlanta knew you already as well as you should be known. So what do you think are some of the things, and again, grievances may be a term that takes us to a place where we sound like we're complaining, and I don't think we are, but what do you think we need to get to, and what are those steps, and what do you, if you had to voice frustration with anything, what is it?
I mean, it's just, the frustration part, and this is not race specific because we all suffer it. It's just the limitations of our expectations. Like, that's it. I mean, it's just based off the narrative that we've been fed since we were born. And this is how the world's supposed to look. And the only way that you can break away from that, I mean, at least in my experience, is to break away from the culture that created that narrative for you. You have to go out and go experience something different, which is why I'm an avid traveler and highly recommend it. Even if I was going to lose my best person and say, yeah, I'm about to go do 2 years in Europe, I'm like, well, please, could you go? I mean, I don't need you. Just get out of here. You know, beat it. Go experience it so you can get some real perspective and see that this is not the only way to do things. It's a great way. It's a great country, no doubt. But I'm just saying it's the approach is just limited. And that's really my biggest complaint, because I'm not fighting with people that have, you know, bad intentions for the most part, you know, even though I do enjoy a good fight with somebody who has bad intentions, but typically it's people that mean well, they just don't have the experience or the freedom to look at things a little bit differently, just to see, you know, a different way of doing things. And so I don't know how you do that, because you got to like unpack everything, then you got to burn it, and then you got to rebuild it and then pack it again. You know, it's a whole tear down, rebuild kind of situation to get past that immediately. But I think as far as, I mean, obviously getting more voices, more diversity in those rooms, in those editing rooms, and those, you know, at the writer's table and all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously that would have a huge impact. But even then, the reality is, if you're from here, you're from here, and it's gonna make its way into your voice until you break free of it. Yeah.
Well, that's an outstanding segue. And again, like I feel like you're drinking Jameson, I'm drinking Elijah Craig, but it seems like we've hit a place where our liquids of choice are starting to flow together, because I was about to ask you about Houston. How does being where you are, how does that influence what you do? Because people ask, I know being in Atlanta, what is the Atlanta style of cooking? And what is an Atlanta restaurant? And my answer to that kind of shifts to what I think someone's ready to hear. But I always like to land on for here. I think Atlanta is a very intentionally undefined city. I think there's a lot of room to do all kinds of things. I wonder what you would say is the culinary, temperature or the zeitgeist of what Houston is. But then how does that affect what you do?
Well, it's actually perfect for what I do. And now I love Atlanta. I think Atlanta has some of the best food in the country, like some of the best. Me and my brother were just out there. Well, not just out there. Before the world changed, me and my brother were out there eating our way through the city. And all we had was 24 hours, but we managed to gain 8 pounds each in that 24 hours. All right. So I love the food out over there. But the scene in Houston is that we're in the South, but it is definitely not Southern cuisine out here. Atlanta's Southern, beautiful, delicious Southern cuisine out in Atlanta. Houston, not so much. Houston is very, I don't know what the hell it is. But it's perfect for somebody like me to come around and to play with it all. You know what I mean? Obviously, we have a huge Mexican influence on the food, but also we have it's a big melting pot. Actually, it is one of the most diverse cities in the country, and that everybody has their say, and it makes their way. If you're a considerate restaurant, and if you're a considerate chef, everybody else in Houston has influence on what you put on your plate. So the Vietnamese restaurants out here that are killing it, you're going to find Vietnamese. If you're considerate, if you got your finger on the button or you're on the pulse, you'll know that you need to put some Vietnamese up in there. And naturally, it's not because you're trying to keep up with the times. It's just because it's just so delicious, and they have their voice. Same thing with the Chinese restaurants. Same thing with the Oaxacan restaurants. Same thing with you got amazing chef like Johnny and what's that other guy's name? Dominic Lee and Don Burrell. Like Don Burrell worked over at Uchi, which is one of our hottest sushi restaurants in Texas. And then she went up to go open up Culture, which was kind of like a play on Lucille's a little bit, to where it had, the Southern base, global kind of thing. But then you have a beast like Dawn back there with her Japanese background and precision, taking that to Southern cuisine, that has like a little bit more of a deliberate soul food accent to it.
Yeah.
Incredible. So all that to say, I'm trying to say, I don't know the word for it, but it's pretty open. It's pretty open because it's a hot spot for restaurants, 15,000 and counting every day. Even today, with the world changing, we're still adding new restaurants because that's what the city is, a restaurant city. So it's not limited, and it's never been defined. It hadn't been defined because you can't. It's just too much going on. That's like
maybe that's why I'm getting that vibe, because again, people are just like, Mike, you would love Houston if you had. I've just never had an opportunity to actually be there. Same thing for San Francisco. It's just one of those cities that I've never been to, but I'm looking forward to it. I will absolutely be at Lucille's when I come. But let me ask you about this. I think we'd be, remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that we are in the middle of the pandemic. And you talked about, just slightly about, somebody who, let's not blame someone's shortcomings on the pandemic. Sometimes you just got a bad fit. But how has this time affected you specifically, Lucille's? And if there's a positive and a negative, I'd love to hear it. I think everyone would. And then also just you being part of a community that's bigger than just you and your restaurant, but the people who work with you, who trust you, and then the people who you see, who you respect, and then the community of diners. So how has this affected you personally as a chef, restaurateur, and then the community around you coming in back to Houston?
Okay. it's been an incredible experience. And I know that sounds strange given how terrible this is, but moments like this, like, I gotta be really careful in how I frame this, but I just saw the opportunity to do what we do, which is already in our DNA from the beginning. Not just the DNA from the restaurant, but the DNA of my family. Like, we serve. We're here for service, to help. So when it came, the first thing was immediately switch up the model to keep my people on, because that was my biggest concern at first, keeping them safe. Whoever wanted to work and felt safe enough to come into work, we'll provide everything that you need to keep you safe, spaced out and all that. If you want to work, if you need to work, I got you. And it's not going to change. Your pay is not going to change. We're not going to take any percentage, nothing. You're going to keep going. We're going to keep doing. And so you had to get credit. That was grit check number one. It was just testing. This whole experience has been a grit check, seeing how far you can go, how creative you can be. And then the other thing was, since I kept my full staff on, and while we're operating at 83% of what we normally did, our revenue is at 83%, but my costs are down 90%, right? Because I just changed the menu and did all that other kind of stuff. So we're still profitable, but my people needed to work, and we needed to do something while we're there, because we just can't look at each other all day, because then it's going to be a problem. So we started donating. That first 15 days, we donated over 3,000 meals to first responders and all the hospitals that are right in my backyard, right next to the restaurant in the museum district, well, next to in the med center. And so that led into Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden, selecting our restaurant to have that historical meet with him and the Floyd family, which was, that's history right there. You know what I mean? Regardless of how this election goes now, like that's a moment. That's one for the books. And we can talk more about that later if you like. But so then there's that, and then there was, and then we started feeding. Oh, right before he came, we started feeding the elderly who had been cut off from their families due to the pandemic, because you can't run the risk of allowing your kids to come up around there or whatever, come see the elderly, people who are most at risk, because you may just get like a fresh coat of COVID or something like that. And so you can't risk it. So they're cut off and they have to fend for themselves, especially in these assisted living communities where a lot of them don't even have kitchens in their apartments. So we started targeting them, one community at a time. Started off with 127 people that we were serving 5 days a week. And I knew these people so well. Because the first community was in Sunnyside, which is the southern part of Houston, little hood. And, but I knew. Well,
I caught it. I caught hood when you said it the first time.
Some they think, it's a little neighborhood. No, it's not. It's hood. Mm-hmm. But I knew all the people over there, right? There goes Aunt Jackie, there goes Uncle Willie, there goes, Chad, and just got out of prison, whatever. I just knew these people. They were so familiar. Our interactions were just so, they just natural, just reminded me of being a kid. You know what I mean? They're all over 65, 70. So I curated a menu for 30 days for them, specifically for those palates that I know what the expectation is. I know how to force nutrition in there and still make it delicious, approachable, and beautiful, right? So I proposed a 30-day menu and started delivering 30 days straight. And then by the end of it, we were serving 786 people a day in different communities all over the city, all of them in low income, high poverty areas, from Sunnyside, 3rd Ward, Acres Home, 5th Ward, all around. So just the full loop of the city. And so we've continued that work to this day, which has been, right now, we're a little bit over 60,000 meals that we've donated so far to these people. So they don't have to go out to grocery stores and put themselves at risk. They don't deserve it. They've already changed the world for us once before. So now it's our time to pay them back. So that was a great thing. And I realized that the more it's two parts to it. I realized that the more that you invest in community, the more the community can't help but to reciprocate the investment, right? Because they see you doing this. Everybody wants inherently to do good. They just don't have the avenue or the time to consider things that they could do. But if they see an opportunity to have direct access to some good work being done, more likely than not, they want to jump in. So that's been great to see how people have responded to it. We've launched our nonprofit, which is 1913, which is what I'm wearing right now. And yeah, so that thing's just blowing up. And then the other thing that we have, and you'll see the theme is that every component has been about community that I'm mentioning, right? So there's the keeping the staff whole, then it's feeding first responders, then it's feeding our elders in those at-risk neighborhoods. And then in Texas, in particular, they opened up bars about 4 months into the shutdown, 3 months into the shutdown. They allowed bars to reopen. And so all those bartenders got off unemployment, went back to work for 3 weeks to be told you have to shut down again. And so now they're off unemployment with no chance of getting back on it. Like there's no shot. And so at my restaurant, I have a huge patio and we have a bar out there. So I came up with an idea to start giving our bar to different bar teams around the city. And so we allow them to come and curate their own cocktail menus, their own flair, everything that their customer base came to know and love about them. They come and they do their cocktails at our restaurant 1 day a week, 5-6 hours. And then we let them keep, well, we don't let them keep because they earned it, it's their stuff. They take home 100% of the sales, minus taxes, merchant services, and my cost, obviously, for the liquor that I have to buy because they can't bring their own. But I also have that sponsored too. So this just means more money in their pocket. And to date, we've raised over $23,000 that goes straight into their pockets. And this is our 12th week. This actually happened. There's one happening right now at the restaurant. And that piece right there is the one that has been the most beautiful thing to see as far as like what the element that it brings out. Because like I'm bringing bars from all over, our corner of Texas, from Galveston to all these other cities. I don't know how I don't know anything about my own state, but I don't know all these other cities, but they're coming from everywhere. Yeah. And so is their audience, because this is their one shot to have direct access to these people they've developed relationships with, and for them to benefit them without doing a handout, because nobody's comfortable with giving a handout to somebody to respect. But if I have access to get your creations, and there's a tip line on there, and your creation gets me a little, drunk, then, I'm gonna bless you out. So these people are averaging average like $3,000 every night that they're doing it. And the crowds have been great. They have been diverse as I don't know what. And it is the best energy that I've seen at any restaurant. Everybody's sitting outside on the patio, just enjoying themselves, live music. Of course, it's jazz, and it's a great vibe. And I'm happy to say that since I started the program 12 weeks ago, we've been able to onboard 3 of the hottest restaurant groups in the city. One of them is Chris Shepard, who was recently named the best chef in the world.
Yeah.
So him and his restaurant, 1/5, they're under the program, doing it under the 1913 banner. So we're taking off $1 from every cocktail to go into my nonprofit. That's my first little attempt at fundraising because I don't know shit about it. Excuse me. Then there's B&B Butcher, which is the hottest steakhouse in Texas. They just started doing it. They did their first one on Wednesday, and it was a phenomenal turnout. Great vibes, just like over at Lucille's. It was beautiful. And now we pulled on Chef Anita from Pondicherry, who's a world-renowned chef. And so you see the diversity we get right there. We got Chris Shepard, who's a big Texas boy. We got Ben Berg, who's the owner, who's a New York Jew, who's involved in it, and who I really get along with well. And now we have we have Pondicherry, which is the top Indian restaurant in the city. And then we're working on La Fisherie and then Four Seasons hotels. And all these people are coming together to do this thing to benefit each other, our brethren, our community, and 1913, the work that we're doing over at 1913. So the experience has been an opportunity.
Sounds like it. I mean, again, there's so much that goes into these things. And again, you're taking care of legacy here. So it's just an amazing thing. So it looks like we have some questions coming in from the audience. So I want to make sure we get to them. The chef, looks like Chef Jordan. So if I have that right, the question is, do you have a favorite childhood recipe? The one or two, home food. So is that something from your childhood that your favorite recipe? Maybe it sounds like it may not have been what you were actually cooking, but something that, you know, you liked and maybe you ended up cooking it yourself.
Yeah, it's a few of them, but I remember my favorite one that I always go back to is what my dad used to make. And I hate tomatoes. I hated tomatoes as a kid. I only like them now if I grow them. Like I can't stand tomatoes. But my dad used to make, and who's an amazing cook, by the way. He's an amazing lawyer and an amazing cook. And luckily for me, he's a better lawyer than he's a cook. But so, that's a joke around.
Shout out to Dad. Yeah.
But what was it? He used to make the simplest thing: fried pork chop with bone-in pork chop with rice, black-eyed peas on top of the rice, with fresh slices of tomatoes and just fresh green onions, black pepper and salt on the tomatoes, and just you had to. So if I put all those components of that dish together in one forkful, it was the best thing I ever had. Yeah. I'm getting those salivatory, they're activated right now thinking about it. Yeah.
I could taste that right then when you talked about it. I mean, it always is amazing the simplicity of freshness, right? and how delicious that can be when someone knows how to apply it, and just to show you, and it's endearing because it shows you can do this. It almost teaches you to take care of the land, take care of the recipes. You can always go and be creative, but the baseline is always going to get you home. You know what I mean? Like, you're always going to make it there. Looks like we got another question coming up. I don't want to hold these folks up. Question: has there ever been any exploration of how soul food played a role in creating Black American love stories? We're getting into a new wave over here. Okay, like yeah. I mean,
love stories.
Yeah. But I think, I think the movie Soul Food, if I'm going to remember, I mean, there was some cheating going on in that movie. Shout out to Babyface, and
I mean, if I think about it, because me and Tony had a discussion comparable. She was trying to figure out the origins of soul food, how it came to be soul food, right? And now that I'm thinking back on that conversation, and I think I understand the point of the question, or how there's that correlation. I guess all I would say is that love stories, I mean, if you know about the concept of soul food, the way that we see it now, Black association, where does everything happen? In any family, and in any family gathering in our community, it's always in the kitchen.
Yes.
It's always the kitchen. That's where we share our stories. That's where we have our arguments. That's where it happens. So maybe it's as simple as that. Like, I mean, our stuff's born, like our genius, just like with jazz, is born out of creativity with using nothing to make something beautiful. And all that stuff happens, starts at the kitchen, starts it into the kitchen. So that's the best I got. I winged it on that one. So I hope I didn't fail you, whoever asked that question.
Nah, I'm glad you answered it that way, because that could have taken a turn into like some OnlyFans kind of stuff. So we want to keep it PG, you know what I mean? As children who are trying to learn how to cook, they're looking to Chef Williams to, have a good guidance point, and it could have gone left. So good on you, brother. I've been asking leaders like yourself this question. What advice from a mentor or past experience did you lean on to help you navigate through these times? It's a pretty good question.
Yeah. I'm really happy to say that, and I'm very grateful to be able to say this, is that I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and one way or another, they've all had their own businesses and on every level, from barbershops to you name it. But an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. If you're set in your own way, you're set in your own way. And so with that being said, the advice it's never been offered as advice, because if anybody knows anything about entrepreneurs, we don't really take advice that well, especially not from family. But we can have conversations about our experiences all day. And so that's given me perspective. You know what I mean? So there's never been like any coaching or advice or anything like that, because when somebody offers something like that in my family, it's like, well, how the hell are you going to tell me what I need to do with my staff? Have you seen your staff? Have you taken a look at your people yet? All right, when you clean that up, then you can come talk to me. So we pulled that out of the conversation, but we can sit and have conversations about what's going on in each other's prospective business, and that just gives us insight and a different way of looking at things. And the one thing that we share for sure is that we just don't quit. There is no, you can take all the L's you want, but there are no fails. You can lose that day, but you don't fail ever. You just keep going. You figure it out.
Hats off to that. We got a question. What is your guilty pleasure junk food?
Gummy bears all day, every day. It's not even my guilty pleasure junk food. That is my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, so yeah.
Yo, I don't understand why everybody just got hip to gummy bears all of a sudden. Like, I think it has something to do with cannabis. You know what I mean? We can say cannabis because cannabis is the proper way, because there's, cannabis and everything. It's illegal. It sounds cultured, but we'll say cannabis gummies and everything like that. But what I've loved, dude, and I don't mean to jump in on your shine right here, but I'm breaking a wall right now. I know I'm the journalist here. I'm supposed to be interviewing you. The twin snakes, the Haribo, you got a sweet one and you got a sour one, and they're stuck together. Oh,
I'm gonna give you a gift, man. So I've been eating those things for about 6 years now. But the Evil Twins by Trolley, it's the exact same thing, but the texture is just a little bit better. Evil Twins.
Trolley. Okay, all right.
I eat those.
Where do we go to those? Because they have Haribo, the Haribo, or whatever how you say it. Those are more, I see them more often. Where do you get the Trolley? At Target, or where is that?
Any reputable gas station, you should be able to find them. I'll tell you, after we're done with this, I got your email address. I'll send you up a couple of packs.
Yo, but it's not just about me, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Street Credibility. This man right here has it. Gas station. Meet him at the gas station. Pull up. 87 octane to 93 octane. Get those trolleys. You know what I'm saying? Evil Twins. I believe I got it right. If he sends it to me, I'll send it to y'all. Put your email address in the group chat. You don't have much time. Let's keep going. There seems to be a current synergy between chefs, restaurants, and service. That is giving back and holding communities together. But restaurants are suffering so much because of COVID. What can we do to help? Ordering takeout doesn't feel impactful enough. Good question.
Well, outside of donations, which restaurants, I'm sure some will take them, but really that's what we're there for. We're there, like restaurants, we're there to provide food, service, experience. And the synergy that the person mentioned, they're absolutely right. That is the purpose of restaurants. That's why they're built, and that's why they'll survive this. They will survive, not all of us, but the concept of restaurants will survive for sure, because it's just inherent in human culture. We need restaurants. But as far as like what we can do to support them is just stay small with it. You know what I mean? The people that big business, like the big Chili's and all these other kind of things and all that stuff, they get the bailout that they don't have to pay anything back on. They get a real bailout. Small business, they get this money, and we're also left with the responsibility of paying it back if we don't meet these very extreme criteria, which has been loosened up a little bit, which we appreciate, and we all needed it. But small businesses, we're the ones that drive it. The restaurant industry alone employs, close to 14 million Americans work in just the restaurant industry. That doesn't include bars, just restaurants. I believe that's right, maybe. But so when it comes to your spending, if you're going to go out to eat, just go small. Just always go small, and it adds up. And trust me, like the restaurateurs, we're going to do everything that we can to find out how to keep it going, because that's what we are. We're a nasty bunch of masochists who actually kind of like these kind of challenges. So just stay small, because we're the ones who need it, and those are the relationships are the ones that are important. And not just the restaurants. All business. Because when you work with I think I said something about making that investment with each other. Like when you make investments in the small business owner, and you know his name, how can you not help but to make an investment in you when you come on hard times? If we know each other, you've been supporting my business all this time. The day is not your day. You're having a bad day. You can't pay to have your muffler or whatever those things are called fixed or something. I got you. because you've had me all this time. And then that's the only way you're going to have those relationships. You're not going to have that over at Pep Boys or insert any kind of big thing. So the best way to help is just support small business.
So that brings me to one point that I wanted to ask you before, and I wanted to make sure that we got a chance to give Toni Tipton-Martin her proper due for putting us together for this conversation, because it's been epic. I mean, I think these conversations they should be much more frequent. The crowd will tell us if we're right or not, but I really believe in that. But I wanted to ask you, what did you think, before I get to make sure we get to this point, I'm going to ask you to make sure that you let everybody know where they can follow up with you. We had another question about whether or not you're working on a cookbook, which we addressed earlier, but I want you to have time to get to that. But I wanted to ask you specifically, what would Lucille think of you right now? And what do you hope she thinks about you?
I think, I mean, in all honesty, like I know that she would be extremely proud of the work that we're doing, with the approach that we're taking, with the transparency of the way that we're operating our business, and the fact that we are acting as like this beacon of light in the city that right now was a couple of weeks ago, like the second hotspot behind New York as far as the outbreak is concerned, the pandemic's concerned. I know she'd be very proud of the way that we handled ourselves with that. I don't think that she would be so proud with my iterations of her hot rolls or her chili biscuits, but outside of that, I think she's okay, and I think she'll give me a little wiggle room right there, because I mean, she perfected that thing for 30 plus years, and I'm only on year 10.
Outstanding. So I'm going to give you this time to make sure that everyone who wants to follow you knows how to get in touch with you. So give us your social media handles, give us your web address, give us where to find you, make sure that everyone knows how to get in touch.
Okay. Well, for the website for Lucilles, excuse me, it's lucilleshouston.com. Lucille spelled like Lucille Ball, BB King's guitar, traditional Lucille. Lucilleshouston.com is the website for the restaurant. It's social media, the Instagram, and I think the Facebook, they're both Lucille's Houston. I think the @ or whatever, I'm not really big on the stuff, but it's Lucille's Houston on all three of them. The one that I really ask people to get involved with, because we're doing some incredible work, and I just secured a second satellite kitchen to continue with this 1913 initiative that we created in 5th Ward, which is a neighborhood that direly needs it, because we're planning to start doing that in October, doing another 750 meals. So then we'll be up to close to 1,600 meals a day is what we're about to start doing. I say that to say I'd ask you to go to donate or go to the website of lucilles1913.org. There you can see a quick rundown on our initiative. It's a work in progress because I'm only 4 months into the nonprofit game. It's a different language. It's a whole different approach. And so we're trying to figure it out. But we'd love for you to come visit that and take the journey with us. And if you are in a position to support, because it's amazing to see the difference that a meal or something that people can count on these uncertain times when there is nothing you can count on, where they can know at 11 o'clock or 11:30 or whatever time it is, depending on the destination, that this meal will be delivered. It's going to be delicious. It's going to be safe. It's going to be made with care. It's special to see. It's really special. So lucilles1913.org is the website, and the social media is, I believe, Lucilles1913. I should have had that written down somewhere.
Hey, we're going to toast, first of all, to you, Chef Chris Williams and Lucille's in Houston. Also want to give a shout out to Toni Tipton-Martin, who is a great friend of both you and I, and great to be connected with you, to have this conversation with the Decatur Book Festival. We appreciate our sponsors. We appreciate you, the viewers, the people who will share this conversation. We appreciate everyone who will go to Lucille's in Houston when you're in Houston. Make sure you go and visit my friend's restaurant. It is probably going to be the best what is it? It'll be some kind of Asian cuisine because this young man wants to make sure that you don't pigeonhole him into soul food. So if you're looking for fried chicken, you're gonna have to make. I don't know. I'm just saying, honestly, I would love for everybody to make sure that when you're in the city of Houston to go to Lucille's. I would love for you all to be on the lookout for when he does put out a cookbook. He gave you his social media handles. Thank you to the Decatur Book Festival. Chef Chris Williams, thank you very much. Cheers to you. We're going to close out. And everyone, you know how to get in touch with us. We'll be here all weekend and all month long for the Decatur Book Festival. Cheers to everyone else. And what are we cheersing to? Do you have anything you want to toast to before we get out of here?
Great conversation, man. It's really nice to meet you. And I'd like to second that cheers to Tony because she's the one who put us together and also was able to get me involved in this program, which I'm very grateful for. So just here's to 2021. How about that?
Cheers, brother. Let's get out of this year, man.